Folks, we're back to Steve Sanchez, Jim Jones of Veterans in Politics. Today, our guest is going to be Lindsay Moores, candidate for Clark County District Court, Department 17. But before we get to Ms. Moores, Jim, you have any rants?
Yeah, just a short one. It's not really a rant. It's something interesting. So last night, I was watching this sports reporter that I've been following for a number of years.
Ron Futrell?
No, yeah, Ron. Actually, interesting enough, Ron actually interviewed me when I was a junior in high school.
Oh, wow.
So I've known Ron Futrell for a number of years. No, this individual, his name's Jason Whitlock. And the only reason why I bring him up is because, so Brett Favre, a Hall of Fame quarterback, recently got thrown out in the news that he worked with the governor of Mississippi to allocate $1 million worth of Mississippi's welfare money to go to build a new volleyball arena for the college that his daughter is attending.
Okay.
So this blows up into this big scandal. So Jason Whitlock went on, and this is the reason why I'm bringing it up, because I immediately thought of you, and I've been talking about it for a long time too. So Jason Whitlock started talking about the Unity Party, where it's pretty interesting how establishment Republicans and establishment Democrats seem to be their own party now. And they use their leverage back and forth to pretty much, lack of a better term, screw the taxpayers. Mm-hmm. Whether it's a Republican or a Democrat, it doesn't matter. So when he brought that up, I started laughing because I was like, man, Steve and I have been talking about this for a little bit. Mm-hmm. So the point to this is that's why it's very important for everybody to don't just arbitrarily vote for a Republican or a Democrat. Like, really figure out who these people are.
So they call it the Unity Party.
Yeah.
We call it the Establishment Party.
Right. So that's the new thing that Jason Whitlock's been talking about, is the Unity Party. And I found it pretty interesting. And it kind of brought me back to an experience that I had in, I believe it was like 2010 or 2011. And so I'm going to bring up some familiar names. So Kathleen Vermillion wins her race.
Vermillion.
Yeah.
You mean the ex-lover to
Vermillion, yeah.
Governor Steve Sisolak?
Right. So she wins her race for Henderson City Council, right? Uh-huh. Now, I know that city council races are supposedly nonpartisan, right? But everybody knew that she was involved with Steve Sisolak at the time, right? And that she was a registered Democrat. Mm-hmm. Well, after she wins that race, she holds a victory party. Okay. So interesting enough. Yeah. So interesting enough. Mm-hmm. So me, Terry Dunn, Jim Dunn go to this victory party. Mm-hmm. Ironically, some of the first people we run into are prominent Republicans. Okay. There were more Republicans there than Democrats. So that's when it started to kind of click for me that, like, hey, be really careful here, guys. No. Like, don't just arbitrarily, decide that because the Republicans are out for you or vice versa.
I always say the fix is in.
Yeah. Okay. So I know that was very long-winded, but I had to get that off my chest. I just think that's ironic.
You good now?
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Yeah. Ms. Morris?
Are you asking me if I have a rant?
No, tell us about yourself.
I was like, well, probably I do.
Tell us about yourself.
Thank you. So I am currently a Chief Deputy District Attorney at the Clark County District Attorney's Office.
Okay.
I'm on the Special Victims Unit, so I prosecute predominantly sexually based crimes against children.
Wow.
Yeah.
You must have thick skin to do that.
It's funny because when I first started, I was like, it'll be fine. I can compartmentalize, and there are some days where I come home and I'm like, babe, I'm just raped out,
Do you have kids?
I don't.
Okay.
So I think that probably helps. I've heard that it's maybe harder when you're thinking about, your own children. So just 3 dogs, but so I've been there for about 2 years.
How do you like it?
I love it. It's when I started, I met my husband's a pilot in the Air Force, and we met.
Thank you for his service.
Thank you. I will thank him. So we met at a wedding in 2010 in Seattle.
How ironic.
Right. We actually have walked down the aisle twice now together. So, so I met him there. We started dating long distance. I moved down here in about 2011. So I had to take my 3rd bar. So I'm actually barred in California, Oregon, Nevada, and I've waived into Washington.
Well, you got 2 of the hardest bars. I think New York was the 3rd. Right?
Yeah. And I could actually waive into New York if I wanted to, but I'm good with bar exams. So, moved down here, started working at the DA's office after working as a, insurance defense attorney for a period of time, and was there. I've basically been there ever since, except we were sent to California for a brief period of time from 2017 to 2019, where I was in Riverside County at the district attorney's office there. Okay. So that's kind of been my employment background.
So, Ms. Morris.
Yes.
How long you been here in Nevada?
So I have been here, like I said, I moved here in March of 2011.
Okay.
And I was waiting for bar results. They came out May. Okay. And then we did move to California from August of 17 to January of 19. Okay. But because of the Civil Service Relief Act, I was able to keep my Nevada residency, still voted in Nevada. I don't know if we knew we wanted to come back, but maybe something about us was telling us that California wasn't for us. So
what brought you back here?
Well, to be perfectly honest, at the district attorney's office out there, I didn't feel good about what I was doing. I felt that they were...
In Riverside?
Yeah. Okay. I felt that they were over-aggressive in their prosecution of crime to the extent of wanting me to plead a homeless man that stole 2 candy bars to a robbery. A robbery is a strike, and I'm sure we're all aware of the 3-strike system. In California, a strike.
And candy bars, he's trying to eat.
Yeah, he's hungry. I'm like, I eat every 3 hours.
It's not like he's trying to steal a diamond ring.
Literally 2 candy bars and pushes the clerk. So anytime you put the word technical in front of a crime, that's not necessarily what I'm interested in prosecuting. And I was told to do things that I didn't feel that they just didn't like. I became a prosecutor because I want to look in the mirror and feel good about myself and help my community. And I just, from a very early time, started calling my husband crying, saying, "Can you find a way to go back to Vegas?" And we found a way, and I was fortunate enough to get hired again, which I think that's the best compliment you can get is if they want to hire you a second time. So I'm very appreciative of that. And my husband was able to come back, which is not an easy thing in the military. He actually went from being in active duty to an AGR position in the Guard. So he actually joined the California Air National Guard. So then at that point, he now is on loan to Nellis through MPAA days. I don't necessarily know what any of this means, but
is he an airman?
He is a RPA pilot.
Okay.
So
he's an officer in the Air Force.
Yeah. So he's a lieutenant colonel. He's half of his time is at the Warfare Center, and the other half is at the Weapons Squadron instructing future pilots.
So, Ms. Morris, why do you want to be a district court judge?
So honestly, the simplest answer is I think that we need judges that are decisive and judges that are determined. And I have been feeling recently that our bench has gotten more afraid of getting overturned, which I get it. No one wants to be overturned. No one wants to make a mistake, but we're going to make mistakes. We're humans. We're going to make mistakes. But at the end of the day, as a judge, you're an umpire, you're a referee. Like no one wants to say, well, maybe it was pass interference. Maybe it wasn't. And indecision has never been one of my weaknesses. So I think that I could be decisive and determined to make sure that I'm doing a good job.
So you're not scared to get your hands dirty?
I'm not. I'm from a very small town in Eastern Oregon. Both of my parents grew up on cattle ranches. And when you come from that sort of agrarian background, my parents are very hard workers, and they instilled that work ethic in me from a really young age. If
you was to go through the appointment process, how you think you will fare on that?
So if I applied for appointment?
For a district court judge, the same position. If you were to apply as a...
So I actually did apply for appointment for Department 9. Ultimately made it to the final.
That's why I brought it up. I knew there was a reason why I was going down there. I was trying to figure it out.
I was curious why you asked. I was like,
you ran again. You and
Gall.
Yes.
Maria Gall.
Correct.
Judge Gall.
Yes.
Okay. Congratulations for that.
thanks. So I didn't get it, but I knew that
But you went to the governor.
I did, yes.
And I sat through, I can't tell you how many Nevada Judicial Selection Committee interviews with different candidates for a judge, and I've sat through a lot of them. And I know for a fact, when they pick 3 names, those names are exceptional.
Well, thank you.
Those names are exceptional because and plus I knew a lot of the committee members that actually interview judicial candidates.
Mm-hmm.
So congratulations to that. I know it can't be easy to go to the governor's office, no matter what governor it is, if it's Republican or Democrat, doesn't matter. But to get to that position, to get to that part, I know how grueling it has to be. Yeah. And you ran against Judge Gall, and Judge Gall is a very fine jurist, and we really like Judge Gall. Yeah. In fact, we endorsed her. Mm-hmm. So tell us about that process.
So it was a lot. Like, it was literally, the application is huge, and I think it said list everywhere I'd worked for the past 20 years, which basically takes me back to high school. So I was digging deep. I found everything. And then you fill out the application. You have a personal statement. You need to have a photograph. You ultimately submit to a background check. They want to run that early because which I've been background checked in every state. So there's no hope for me being able to commit crimes and not get caught. So
I mean, you hold 3 different bars, right?
Yeah, all of those had an ethics background. Yeah, and anytime you volunteer with children, I volunteered with children in various states. Like, my fingerprints are everywhere. So, anyways, you do that. Then you also interview then with the panel, like you discussed. And from there, they forward people to the governor, and then you have an interview with the governor. You get 3 different letters of recommendation from attorneys. You get 3 different letters of recommendation from other members of the community that aren't attorneys. I don't know what they said because I send the forms to them. They fill out a questionnaire as well as submit a letter. So it was a pretty in-depth process, but I'm glad I went through it. I think anytime you interview, it's a good experience. Anytime you interview with a governor, right? I've never done that before. So that was a good experience. And to interview with the people that were on the panel, we had Justice Peregrine, like some really important people. So it was a good process. It was kind of long, but I guess that's probably normal. Maybe from like May into late June, I would say, but.
All right, I don't want to take Jim's question away. Okay. Go ahead, Jim. You know, she's went through the appointment process, and now she's going through the electoral process. Go ahead.
No.
Ask the question. Go ask it.
I actually have and I will ask it. But my first question is, okay, well, it's kind of what Steve's already alluding to. So I've always went back and forth between whether judges should be elected or appointed. And there's good and bad in both processes. But I've advocated for the appointment process over the election process on several occasions. But now that you went through the appointment process, my question to you is...
Hold on, before you say something. She didn't just go through the appointment process.
Right.
She was selected to be a district court judge to the governor. So that's huge right there.
Yeah. And thank you for bringing that up, because that's getting to exactly what I was going to say. Because when I advocate for the appointment process, a lot of people, attorneys, will say, well, I don't like the appointment process because if the governor is not a lawyer, is not an attorney, and is not well versed in the law, then why should they be able to even choose amongst 3? Now, former Governor Brian Sandoval, everybody knows who Brian Sandoval is, but with Steve Sisolak, a lot of people are kind of skeptical on whether. So, like, Judge Gall said that he asked very good questions.
He did.
Yeah,
he did. I mean,
how do you think that went? Well, you already got to that point, but how do you think the interview with the governor went? Do you think he was really in tune to the judiciary and understood how it works?
So it's hard to say. I think that he probably got a lot of information from the panel, and the panel are not all judges, but some, and some lawyers. And so I think he most likely studied that. I know that he had read through my application because he asked me questions that you wouldn't have known but for reading. I think that it's kind of one of those double-edged swords, because I think I like the idea of appointment, right? Because if we want judges, we want them to be nonpartisan. We want them to purely just judge the law without fear of repercussion, right? And so I like that idea. But then on the one hand, does that mean you need to be politically connected? I don't know. I think then when you look at, let's let people elect it. But then if you're looking at people that might not be informed, I feel like a lot of people that I meet think that they can't even vote for me because they're like, oh, I don't live in District 17. And I think they confuse it with a Senate district. And I'm like, no, it's all of Clark County. But even very intelligent people that I meet, they're like, I never know who to vote for a judge. I just ask my attorney friends. And if those attorneys friends practice, or if they, so to be honest, like, I don't know. I see the pluses to both sides. What I can tell you is super weird. My husband's family is from Albuquerque, and we were there over the holidays. And I was talking to one of his friends who's running for a judge position in Texas, and their judge positions are partisan, which I thought was crazy, because I was like, isn't the whole point of being a judge to be independent, impartial, and conduct yourself with integrity? Like, literally, the law is the law, even if I don't like it.
Justice is supposed to be blind, right?
Even if this is not a law that I would have voted for. This is nothing. If it's the law, it's the law. And I thought that was really interesting that they were partisan, at least in his area in Texas, because he just made it through the primary for a Republican trial court seat. So, I guess I don't know the answer, to be honest. I think that there are positives to both sides, and I see what you're saying. And I think that's why, we have federal appointments. But then it's like what you said, who's appointing? Are they knowledgeable about the law? Are they knowledgeable? It certainly needs to come from people that know what they're talking about, or we could just be appointing people that aren't going to do the job well, you know? So I guess that's kind of a crappy middle of the road answer, but
well, no, I mean, it's about the fairest answer you can give. Yeah. Honestly.
Yeah. So it's tough.
So how do you feel about judicial temperament? And what's your take on it?
Sure. Well, my take is I've been in front of so many judges over the years. I've been in front of judges that basically didn't want me to appear if I were wearing pants, because they were a very old school male that thought women should always wear skirts. I've been told that I talk too fast. I do talk too fast.
Everybody else needs to keep up.
Yeah. The poor court reporters, though, are the ones that really get me. The ones I'm in front of a lot, they just go like this. And I'm like, sorry, I'll slow down, because when you have to type
they got video now, so you're good.
Yeah, I know, right? So I think that it's really important at the end of the day, and I always say this. So my family plays horse polo. So I grew up playing polo in Eastern Oregon. And the way that I look at it is this: if you have been able to play the game, for lack of a better term, if you've been able to practice as a lawyer, so we need lawyers that are trial lawyers as judges, that's the only time that you can get to where you're officiating that game, and that you have that appropriate temperament, because the temperament comes from being in front of judges and getting rulings that make you want to claw your eyeballs out and you just say, thank you, Your Honor. And getting rulings that make you so happy you want to jump up and down and say, thank you, Your Honor. And so the reason I bring up polo is there's a professional umpire association. And I was talking about maybe getting a job with them at some point in the future. And I was speaking to one of their representatives, and he said that you actually have to reach a certain goal rating as a player before they will let you officiate.
Right.
And I thought that was really cool, because not that I don't want to use too many sports analogies, but how can you really be good at officiating something if you never actually did the thing?
Sure.
And I think that the best way to get a temperament is to have done the thing, have things go your way and not show it, because it'll look bad in front of the jury. Have things go terribly not your way. And you still have to be professional, and you still have to be courteous. And I have to say, like, I'm very happy that the majority of my experience has been in criminal law, because I routinely, after trials, like, will go have a beer with my opposing counsel. Because if you can go head to head adversarial with each other on things that matter a lot, and then afterwards still be cordial, like, I guess that's what I consider judicial temperament, is how you treat people. And that's something that is probably a product of who you are as a person, how you were raised, and things like that were instilled. But it's also from being in that situation and knowing things don't always go our way, but we have to be professional, because literally this is the system, like a large system that defines us as a country. And if we're throwing books against the wall, or if we're being rude or mean or belittling people, what does that say about our system of government? And I'm sorry, like I've had terrible things happen, and I thank you. And you have to keep your cool, because I think the integrity of the system is more important than any one case.
As a judge, oh my goodness, I just lost my train of thought, Jim. This got to be a rough day today.
If not, I got a question.
As a judge, when you see something that's a violation of the canons or the judicial ethics, whether it's a colleague of yours or whether it's an attorney before you or a pro se, you probably won't even get those, but just in case you do,
right.
What would you do if you see somebody violate the law that's before your court? That's an attorney or a colleague that does that.
Are you meaning violate the law like a statute, or are you meaning like a more of a judicial code, like an ethics violation?
Doesn't matter
Either.
Yeah.
So realistically, and I have to be perfectly honest, I don't know what my duties are as a judge in terms of ethical violations. I would believe that they would be to report them. Mm-hmm. And so obviously I would follow what that duty is, because at the end of the day, you look at being a prosecutor, right? For example, we have a really high ethical duty. So we have duties to disclose evidence that is bad for us, right? And it's per, Supreme Court case law, Brady versus Maryland and Giglio and its progeny. And so at the end of the day, and I was taught this from a very young age from an attorney that I very much so look up to in our office. He said that no case is worth your reputation and no case is worth your integrity. So if that's happening in front of you as the judge, right, and you set the tempo of that courtroom, you allow that conduct to continue, then you're just setting the culture. You're saying, I'm not going to call that foul. And you just can't do that, because like I said, like the biggest thing for me is I really do believe in those canons. Like we need to be independent, impartial, and conduct ourselves with integrity. And you can't do that when there's unethical behavior in your courtroom. In terms of the specific procedure, I just don't know that. Like if I report it to the state bar or if it's
judicial.
Yeah, I'm just not sure that particular route, but absolutely. Like you just can't. The system is more important than us. The system is what our forefathers died for. Like it's not perfect. I get it. But I tell you what, I'd rather be accused of a crime here or go to court and sue someone here than any other country. So.
Okay. So, my next question, and I really liked how you said about judicial temperament as far as being decisive. Mm-hmm. And I do find that a lot of judges, and I'm not a judge, obviously, I can understand that judges wouldn't like to be overturned,
sure,
right? Because it's kind of a black eye on your reputation,
yeah,
right? Totally. So I get that. But one of the first things that a judge that we have endorsed said that typically the answer is in law school, well, maybe. That's a number one answer to everything, right? Well, maybe. But I think the thing I'm impressed with is when you said being decisive, because, okay, so even if you are decisive, okay, and you do get overturned, okay, but then that sets a precedence, mm-hmm. right? So then that clears it up more for the next judge that goes through the same thing. So the more clear the law can be, or the decisions that judges make can be, benefits the entire system.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate the fact that you're willing to be decisive and, okay, well, maybe I do get overturned. Okay, fair enough. But now we have precedents out there to say, hey, so you're helping to benefit the system rather than worrying about your own pride.
Exactly.
Because that's one of the things that I've gotten frustrated with a lot of judges sitting and people that are running for judges. It's almost like it's this arrogance thing.
Mm-hmm. Have you met lawyers? Come on.
As soon as they put that robe on, now all of a sudden they got this huge God complex.
Sure.
And I think that's a wrong way to go.
Yeah. No, of course. I mean, and I think a lot of it goes back to like who you are as a person, right? Like, do I have a sense of self-worth and am I confident? Yes.
Yeah.
But am I full of myself? No. Like, are you kidding me? There's already going to be 100 people out there smarter than you on any given day. People that are better at everything. Like, arrogance is it's a stinky cologne, and you said I smelled good, so I'm not wearing it.
She has a sense of humor as well. Do you think a judge should explain their ruling to the attorneys before them?
I think so. I mean, I think here's the thing, like and I love the answer is, well, maybe. Yeah. Because a lot of times, right, like you're like, oh, there's the right side and there's the wrong side. And you're like, well, there's, and we can argue both sides, right? Like let's take a case right now. You argue this side, you argue this side, and then we can swap. And that's the beauty, I think, of arguing and of reasoning and a lot of the work that we get to do as lawyers. For me, I have always been that person growing up that asked why. And I'm sure my parents were like, because I said so. But I kept asking, so they finally just got to where they explained it to me. I function a lot better personally if I know the why. Even if I disagree with how you got there, I appreciate that. I mean, not that you need to give a whole like thesis dissertation or something, but if you are able to do that, absolutely. Because I think, like you were saying, it sets the future tone of, oh, she actually takes it seriously if you violate this timeline, or she actually, gave leeway here because it was, the right thing to do in terms of justice, and she had some judicial discretion. So I think when you explain that, people are more likely to be like, okay, even though I didn't get what I wanted, I understood her reasoning and it made sense, even if it was the opposite side.
Okay. So would you be a judge that rules from the bench, or would you be a judge that takes everything under advisement? And then when you do take it under advisement, what time period do you think that you should get back to the
So I think it depends. I think it would depend, right? So obviously some issues are way more complex than others. Sure. And I certainly don't want to rule off the cuff. And I don't want my comment about decisiveness to be mistaken for I'm just flippant and crazy and do whatever I want. But that's not the case. But what I think is when it's clearly a very established area of law and it's a simple ruling, I think ruling from the bench is where it would be my default. But at the end of the day, I just had a case in front of a judge and it was pretty complex the other day. We did a hearing and she took it under advisement, and I was really happy she did, because I think that we all needed to go back and reread it because it had so many different turns where I was like, which branch are we on? Like I was even struggling to track it. Now, in terms of timeline, that's the thing where you have to be expeditious, because at the end of the day, whoever is waiting for it has a lot invested in it. At any given point, whoever's in front of you, criminal, civil, that very well might be the most important issue of their life, of their year, like a very important issue. And to be waiting on that, I can't give a for sure timeline, but I guess.
How long is too long then?
In my opinion, anything over maybe a week or a week and a half.
Okay. Fair enough. I like that.
Having not done it, I don't want, if there's like, I have to read so many cases and that's just impossible. I might be eating my words at a later date, but within the week to 2 week range, I can't imagine it.
Because I heard some judges, not all, take up to 4 or 6 months. Yeah.
I have heard some horror stories about that. And that's like, what are you supposed to do in the interim?
Right.
As the parties that are involved, like just wait.
So Department 17, is it a civil or a criminal, or is it dual?
So it is a split docket. Currently, it is half civil, half criminal.
And how is your civil, civil, what you want to call it, legal mind?
Yeah, sure. So I actually, when I was in preparation for interviewing with the governor, I wanted to make sure and go speak with some other judges. So I tried to get a hold of the current chief judge, but I think he was hunting. So I spoke with Judge Bell, who's the former chief judge. And then I also spoke with Judge Clark Newberry, who's now...
Judge Weiss went hunting?
Yeah. I thought they said he went hunting. It was somewhere... Well, okay, maybe that's the country in me. He was somewhere out of service on the East Coast. So camping, maybe? Maybe not.
When did that start?
I just hear would be like my dad, who's also a lawyer, would be like, he's got no service. He's at Starkey. So they didn't say hunting. They said out of service. So camping. So I spoke with Judge Bell. I also spoke with Judge Clark Newberry, who is the current civil chief judge, and Judge Jones, who is the current criminal, and kind of asked their take on things. And so I did practice civil law for a year in Oregon prior to coming down here. I also worked at a insurance defense firm down here for 4 months prior to joining the DA's office. So I do have some experience. And what I think is really interesting about civil law, and this is what Clark Newberry told me, was that at any given point, right, there's so many different areas of civil law. Right. You're only ever going to be the subject matter expert on your area, right? Like an immigration lawyer is going to know nothing about, land use rights or things of that nature. So am I at a disadvantage because I don't have a expertise of civil law? Maybe, but realistically, it's all stuff that can be learned, and it all goes back to these are trial court departments, right? Jury selection is still going to be the same. The rules of evidence don't change for civil or criminal. There's still certain things that are allowed, certain things that aren't allowed. So a lot of my experience in criminal would be, I guess, cross-admissible would be the term that I would use. And so, not to mention the fact, in further speaking with Judge Clark Newberry, was that civil cases move so much slower. I don't mean that as a derogatory statement. It's just a statement of fact. So I have the ability to do my research and become apprised and put in that work where I was talking about in addition to decisiveness, the determination to make sure that I'm becoming apprised as I need to. And so I think that with the work ethic coupled with the trial experience, not to mention surrounding myself with good people, right?
How much trial experience do you have?
I've conducted over 40 jury trials and over 100 bench trials. So I think, actually, I know for a fact that I've done more jury trials than both of my opponents.
Have you ever served as a pro temp or a referee?
I have not, because I'm unable to do that because the majority
Because you're a prosecutor?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Would have loved to, though.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So, the Constitution. What's your favorite amendment?
Well, it would have to be the 19th, of course, because it allowed women to vote.
I was like, okay.
I mean, come on.
And the suffrage, right?
Yeah.
I've heard the first, I've heard the second,
there
I've
are
heard the
many good
seventh.
ones to choose from, but to be honest, I don't know if I've ever been asked that, and that was the one that, it's a pretty big deal.
So as a judge, how would you apply the Constitution in your courtroom?
Well, I think the issue, and this goes back to you're literally interpreting the law, not making the law. And I think that sometimes judges, like you were saying, with the God complex, kind of go askew and try to have things stand for propositions that they don't actually stand for. And so I don't think that I would say that I'm a structuralist. Like, I'm going to look at the structure of the actual document. Mm-hmm. What I will say is, most likely when you're talking district court level, right? So in Nevada, we have district court judges, we have the Court of Appeals, and then we have the Supreme Court. We have obviously the Constitution of Nevada and then the federal Constitution. In terms of that precedent, I'm going to be going by basically the words on the page. You need to look at what it says and then apply it. I'm not out, I don't have an agenda. I'm not out to try to increase the law or to decrease the law in terms of protections. That's what our representatives and our governors and senators are for. That's not.
So you're not going to legislate from the bench?
No. And honestly, it's really frustrating because there's a separation of powers for a reason, right? I mean, it makes sense because then they check each other. But if we start, if we don't stay in our lane, for lack of a better term, it becomes an issue. And like you said,
sounds familiar.
We can't have a ton of different little mini emperors running around with their own little fiefdom. Like, it's literally independent, impartial, and integrity. The 3 I's has nothing to do with my agenda, even if I dislike it.
Judge Ellie Rahani, she's always talking about staying in her lane.
Mm-hmm. It's important, and I get it, and I'm sure there's an ego boost when you get this thing that you wanted for a while and that you've worked toward. But at the end of the day, you're just a human. You're just one piece of the government. You're not the whole piece. And don't get too big for your britches.
So what would you do differently as a judge sitting on the bench? How would you stand out amongst your peers?
Well, I would think that I would stand out as always being prepared for court, because at the end of the day, that's one thing that we can always control. And I've always felt that way as an attorney. So I think that's very important as a judge, because if you come to court and you've put in all the work, but they haven't, it doesn't matter. You have to go back and redo it.
So let me pause you right there, because actually that leads into a question I had. Mm-hmm. So when you talk about being prepared for court, how long do you have to be prepared for each case? Like, that's a question that I haven't asked on the air before, I believe. because Steve and I have talked to several judicial candidates and have brought up about them being prepared, but I've never actually dug into how long do you have to prepare for a case? Like, I mean, because it's kind of tough.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not fair to be super critical of a judge if all of a sudden, out of the blue, like, okay, you got to rule on this in a week. And, oh, by the way, here's this huge pile of paper and here's all the files. Mm-hmm. Good luck. Is there an NRS statute or anything that, like, prepares judges for, like, hey, you have a week and a half, 2 weeks?
So it wouldn't be an NRS. It would be either the Nevada Rules of Criminal Procedure or the Nevada Rules of Civil Procedure. That's going to govern when motions are filed, how much leeway needs to be given in terms of filing of motions. Mm-hmm. Usually there are rules in place in terms of, you know, for us in criminal, we have to file our motions prior to 21 days before starting of trial. But then that also tolls, and it allows it allows the defense a certain amount of days to respond. But it depends on the type of motion, right? Say if an OR motion, so someone trying to get out of custody is filed, that can be on calendar as soon as 3 days. That motion might be 5 to 10 pages. So it's not like there's a lot that needs to be looked into. Now, in terms of civil, the majority of the stuff that you're going to be handling has been handled in pre-trial discovery motions where there's ample time for you to read because the rules provide for you get this much time to write it. You get this much time to respond. You get this much time prior to argument. So are there potentially going to be last minute emergency motions where they file an order to shorten time to get it on calendar fast? Sure. And those are going to be the exception, though, not the rule. So especially in civil, you're going to have a ton of time. It's going to depend, obviously, on each particular case and the type of case and the stage of litigation that it's in. Right. But to say that, like, something was thrust upon you, and in my defense, you know, in our job as a prosecutor, like, I was just given a case on Monday for a settlement conference that afternoon. You know, I'm handling a prelim tomorrow that I just read today. So I'm pretty good at thinking on my feet and getting, you get to where you can, like, weed through the crap and get to what you need to actually look at to be ready. Right. And if it requires more looking into, then, like you said, it could be a taken under advisement type situation. But again, I haven't been a judge, so I don't want to say things that are out of my lane now as a practicing attorney. Right. But it's been my experience that the law provides for ample time for all of that stuff to be filed, replied to, and then decided on by the judge.
Okay. Yeah, honestly, I was just curious because I've heard of people having a court date on the last week of May. Mm-hmm. And then the attorney's like, hey, well, the court hasn't actually filed anything yet. Now it's been pushed back to November, and then they show up, and then it's been pushed back to February or whatever. So, and
it was a pushback by the court.
Yeah.
And again, I need to stay in my lane, but, and certainly COVID had a really hard issue on all of these things. One of the biggest things facing Clark County right now is the backlog of civil cases. Because criminal, we've been, like, trying to get them through, and we've been trying cases like nonstop. Right. The civil cases, I think, because they're like, well, no one's in jail. It's just money. There is a backlog of cases, and that backlog needs to be handled because we just didn't know what we were doing during that time. And it just kind of created this terrible, like, accordion effect.
How important you believe the mental stability of a judge?
Very important. I mean, think about it. If at any given point in time, the person in front of you, if they're there because, they were wrongfully evicted, if they're there because they're accused of a crime, if they're there because they tried to buy a house and the foundation was crap, you have to be able to handle that stress. Like we were talking earlier about the job that I do, it can be high stress. Mm-hmm. And my mental health is important, and I make sure to take care of it. I actually just found out today that I got into the Boston Marathon for next year.
Congrats. And she's healthy.
But for me, that's a large portion of my mental health is I run and I feel so much better afterwards. Like, my body feels good. My mind feels good. I think that especially lawyers, right? High rate of alcoholism, high rate of divorce. There's a lot of different things that are affiliated with the job that I chose that you need to be cognizant of and be proactive, because an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, right? Is that the colloquialism I'm looking for?
And you know what? Now I know why I'm forgetting stuff, because I had a surgery last week.
Oh, really?
And they told me I can't work out. So I haven't worked out in over a week now.
And it's terrible,
So
right?
it's messing with
Yeah.
me.
And that's huge. And that's huge for Mr. Health.
I know. We've got our hand things.
It's
Like,
messing with
yeah,
me mentally.
yeah. No, it is. It's like a brain fog, I think.
It is.
It really is.
It is.
Yeah.
So Ms. Morris, is there anything else that you want to bring to our attention that you haven't?
I think I've brought everything mainly relevant. You know, like I said, my husband is a year and a half away from retirement.
Mm-hmm.
We plan on staying here. We love Nevada.
He's only 25, right?
He's only 25. Yes, yes. No, he actually his birthday is next week. He'll be 41.
Oh.
So yeah, we know we've made Nevada our home. I came here very randomly. Like I was like, you know, moving for this guy that I'd known for a year, and then we ended up getting married. Nevada has become our home. I think it's a wonderful place. I have the trial experience. I have the desire. I have the good naturedness, and I have the work ethic. I have more trial experience than my opponents, and I would absolutely love people's support. I would welcome. I have my website.
Hold that thought. Jim, you have anything else on this, Morris?
I'm just going to end it the way I have for the last few judicial candidates. I just want to thank you for being a part of the judicial process. It's so important. And you're doing a great service for the community and the country as a whole. And I just want to leave with one thing. Those earrings.
Mm-hmm.
My mom used to do Indian beadwork.
Uh-huh.
Where did you get those earrings?
I was just at a rodeo in Oregon last weekend, and I got them at the Indian Village.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say, because those look familiar.
Yeah.
My mom used to make those.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, Ms. Morris, we would like to thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
And Mark is going to zoom in on you.
Okay.
And you tell folks why you should be the one that they choose to represent Clark County District Court Judge for Department 17 and your point of contact.
Okay. All right. So like I said before, I'm a Chief Deputy District Attorney at the Clark County District Attorney's Office. I've spent the last 2 years of my career prosecuting sexually based crimes against children. I have the trial experience. I have the desire. I have the temperament. The 3 I's, independence, integrity, and impartiality are very important to me. And I promise to be decisive and determined. And I can be reached at my website. There is an attached email, but it's basically www.lindsey, Lindsey, 4, judge, judge.com. And I would love to hear from anyone that would want to reach out. And I appreciate the time to be featured on your show.
Thank you, Lindsay Morris, for coming on the program. We really appreciate it. Thank you, Jim. Folks, that's Lindsay Morris. She's a candidate for Clark County District Court Judge Department 17. And although veterans in politics didn't do the endorsement for Department 17, I personally endorse Lindsay Morris. I have looked through her application when she ran, when she went for the appointment for a district court judge against Judge Maria Gall, and she made it to the governor's mansion, so to speak. And this young lady is bright. She's educated. She has judicial temperament. She'll make an excellent jurist for District Court Department 17. So I advise anybody that wants to know a little bit more about her to go on her website. And if you want to skip that and go by my recommendation, vote for Lindsay Morris. This is Steve Sanson, Jim Jonas for Veterans in Politics. Until next time.